Thank you very much. I guess I'm supposed to make a couple of remarks here at this moment, and I guess we're going to have some questions and answers. Later, I am reminded that we just saw a statue of Ronald Reagan in front of the American Embassy, and I was very inspired by that. I met Ronald Reagan when I was about 18 years old, and most of you know that I served with him in the White House for 7 years. And seeing that his accomplishments are being acknowledged now is a great surprise to me. Most of us who worked with Reagan did not believe that his accomplishments would be recognized for at least 2 or 3 generations. And now they're being recognized. So we ended the Cold War without a major fight between the Soviet Union and Soviet communism and the United States. What a great accomplishment. And I'm going to tie that into what we're doing here, because we live in a world now, because of what Reagan did and others, leaders of the day did, to make this a better world. And we live in a world where the potential to solve all of the perplexing problems that have plagued mankind since our beginning, we have that chance now. There is that alternative. We have developed technology, and technology is currently in the development phase that will carry humankind, if given its opportunity, to higher areas and more benign living and perhaps at peace than anyone could have ever dreamed about so many years ago. And a century ago, the average people in this world did not dream of a better life for them or their family, did not dream of a time when they could have their basic needs taken care of. They dreamed about how they were going to get by the very next day. And now we have, because of technology, and the leaps that we're about to make are much greater than the technology leaps that we have done in the past. Just to let you know, I'm on the Foreign Affairs Committee, but I'm also the Vice Chairman of the House of Representatives Science Committee. And so some of my perceptions are based on the potential that we are developing in the area of technology. But yet, where we have all of this technology, we still have forces at play in the human beings throughout the world that will hold us back, and these same forces that plague those who have aspirations for a better life for people on this planet. The dynamic forces that I'm talking about that threaten us are forces that were put into place during the Cold War. And for example, those things that we did in the Reagan White House, I think, ended the Cold War by getting away from some of the things that had been done before Reagan. But we now have some of the things that were in place during the Cold War that undermine peace, prosperity, and freedom throughout the world. And some of the things that we decided the Cold War, some people are still living in the Cold War. And in America, there's some people, and in Russia and other places, there are still people who are thinking in the terms of the mentality of the Cold War. And this eliminates a lot of the opportunity for cooperation that would serve the interest of all the nations concerned. For example, the government of India only now is making the transition in many people's eyes from where they were aligned with Russia and the Soviet Union during the Cold War to now being a very democratic country, and it was then as well, but being aligned more with the West. And they should, for example, you should be a good friend of the United States. And there are some people, and that is widely recognized. There's a lot fewer people recognize that perhaps what was the Soviet Union and what is Russia should be a good friend of the United States. But the Cold War is only one of the factors that I'm talking about in terms of a dynamic that's preventing us from having this better world that I would envision. The other is a dynamic that was put into place, and it's very fitting that we are here in Great Britain, in the, you might say, the epicenter of colonialism. because there's a lot of forces that are still at play in our world, preventing us from solving problems and seeking to uplift humankind that were put in place during the colonial times. And I'm saying that, now remember, I am a Republican and not a monarch. And so I'm very proud that we were the first guys who took on the strongest colonial power. And but Britain and the United States, of course, since then, have been and should be the very best of friends. But the colonial powers, mainly European, intentionally created national boundaries to divide and conquer the various peoples of the world, especially in the undeveloped world. That was a game plan. That plagues us today. During the Cold War, the United States had to operate and set strategy based on the threat that was right in front of us. That was Soviet communism. And we ended up, and sometimes my country violated and compromised its basic principles in order to defeat the threat of Soviet communism right there. Let me explain one thing. I was a member of Ronald Reagan's senior staff. I was a special assistant to the president. I was one of President Reagan's senior speechwriters for 7 years. Ronald Reagan changed the way we were fighting the Cold War. And I know a lot of people in the liberal intellectuals can't accept that, but he did. The fact is, when Reagan came in, the object was to be anti-communist and to find anti-communist alternatives. Ronald Reagan turned it into a war between democracy and freedom on one side and communism and dictatorship on the other. That's when we started winning the Cold War. And also there was a thing called the Reagan Doctrine. The Reagan Doctrine was, we will, instead of putting our army out to fight the Soviet Union, we are going to help those people who are struggling for freedom, who are fighting our enemies. The enemy of our enemy is our friend. That formula is what brought the Cold War to an end. And we saw, for example, a great expansion of, surprise, surprise, of democracy in Central America and in South America. That isn't recognized that before Reagan, that most of those countries were all dictatorships. And after Reagan left, there was a period before things started going in the opposite direction again, after about a decade, when almost every one of these countries were democratic. That was the Reagan Doctrine and a commitment to freedom, not just stopping communism. That's what ended the Cold War, and that's what gave the world a chance to leave that behind us. So, when Reagan left, we all thought, I thought I was going to be able to retire from politics and become a professional surfer and folk singer. I'm not a very good folk singer, and I'm not really a good surfer, so I hung around. But in short, I didn't think I was going to have to stay in politics to make it a better world. But you know, we have evolved now into where there are great threats to people who want to live in freedom and want to build a better planet. And the threats, of course, I have in mind, which I believe are very clear to those of us in the West, are radical Islam, which is on our throats today, and China, which is positioning itself to strangle us in the future. It behooves us to face this reality if we are to be successful in making it a better and safer world, just as Ronald Reagan had to find the right strategy. First and foremost, I suggest the most important thing is facing facts, and by American policymakers have got to look at the world as it is, face the facts, and make decisions based on this, not on some dynamic that was created by British colonialists, or a dynamic that was even created during the Cold War. And that, perhaps the most important of those facing facts, and the hardest that's been, is that Pakistan is not a friend of the United States, and it is not a friend of those who believe in peace and prosperity for the people of the world and freedom for the people of the world. That's the most important fact we've got to learn if we're going to bring peace to a whole region of the world that's in turmoil. And unfortunately, it's been American money and American support for a vicious, murderous gangster regime in Pakistan that has kept this violence and this horrendous reality as part of the lives of so many millions of people who live in South Asia. So that's the first thing that we've got to do, and that means that we've got to finally stop realizing that the ISI is a major command force and force of direction and supply for radical Islam throughout the world. So first and foremost, we have to quit giving any military aid. I would suggest we should quit giving any aid to Pakistan, who then uses our aid to murder people and to suppress people like the Baloch people who are longing to just have basic freedoms that have been denied them. We have to make sure that the evidence of this is clear to everybody, and the monstrous violence that is being laid upon the people of Balochistan is horrendous. The Pakistani interference in Afghanistan, I mean, we could have had a much more peaceful and a much more peaceful place today, and in the last 10 years in Afghanistan, had not the ISI in Pakistan decided they wanted to dominate that country. And at the same time, you have the people of Balochistan, who are an independent people who, again, were divided by British colonial interests and of course, not recognized by freedom lovers during the Cold War. And those things are behind us now, but the people of Balochistan always deserved their freedom. And we need to recognize that just because somebody maybe in this building, 150 years ago, made some decision about where the lines were going to be drawn down in South Asia with, oh yeah, well the Baloch don't count, we can divide them, and etc. We do not have to we do not have to honor those boundaries. We must honor the principles that God gave rights to every individual. Every people have a right to gather together, the right of self-determination. And I know there's a lot of people who say, well, you're opening up a can of worms for conflict all over the world when you say that. Well, I'm not. Because if there are some people who are satisfied because their government is democratic and they're being treated well and they get along with the other people that have been put together during the colonial times and during the Cold War, well, they won't be revolting against their government because they're satisfied with it. They will choose, they are choosing by not revolting against it, to accept those boundaries. But for people who don't accept the colonialist powers boundaries and will fight because they are being oppressed by some other ethnic group that they've been forced into a relationship with, no, we should be on the side of self-determination. Those people have a right, and hopefully a right that we can give them through the ballot box and not through guns. They have a right to their self-determination. This is what's going on. This is the heart of the matter now in Balochistan and in that part of the world. I proudly stand up with the people, whether it's Balochistan or elsewhere, who believe that they would rather have a separate country than to be part of whatever country that is. The same way my founding fathers in my country set up, they demanded their rights to self-determination. People forget to read the Declaration of Independence sometimes. I hope you've read the Declaration of Independence. It talks about why every people have a right, given by God, to direct their own course through the ballot box and to be free and independent. But then it describes why we as Americans were fighting back in 1776. Go ahead and read it. The same things are now. There was a list of atrocities being committed by the British Crown upon the American people. Well, it's the very same atrocities, only more are being committed by by Pakistan against the people of Balochistan today. So if we're going to be true to our ideals, it means being first and foremost, when we have people like the Baloch, you get behind them, and the people of Afghanistan, and get behind them and say, look, we're going to try to find peaceful solutions to your problem, but if they start killing and dumping bodies all over your country, you can bet we're going on your side and not on the side of the murderers and gangsters. I'll end it with this. I get all sorts of people on my case about this. I mean, they're assuming that I, for example, when I first started supporting the people of Balochistan, that I was just a tool of India, okay? A tool of India. And they kept going, well, why don't you say anything about, about the Kashmir? Well, just to remind everybody, I did pass a resolution in Congress, or propose a resolution, supporting the people of Kashmir's right to a referendum to determine their self-determination, whether they want to be part of India, or independent, or part of Pakistan. Yes, that's right, the people of Kashmir, but that means that all the people who would tweet me and say, you're just an idiot and you're supporting the Indian cause. I was going to go back and say, wait a minute. Who's the idiot here? I support the right of having a referendum for all these people, including those in India, if the Kashmiris don't want to be part. So I've had to tweet back and tell them, what about you? Why aren't you supporting them? The same thing that you're saying that I should support for Kashmir, which I do. Why aren't you supporting the people of Balochistan? So we've got to try to find a peaceful method, and the peaceful method is this. Let's demand a referendum. Let's demand. And if the Pakistanis who keep saying, oh, the Baloch people really want to be part of Pakistan, they love us. That's why we're killing their children, So they'll make sure they love us. Now, the fact is that the people of Balochistan, the best way to end this is not through more killing. Let's try to reason together. And I have a resolution, as you know, that we submitted. We had hearings last year, and I've submitted a resolution afterwards, and here it's a copy of it for those who don't have a copy. I think there should be one around. And it just basically says the people of Balochistan have a right to control their destinies through the ballot box, and we support a referendum for them to decide whether to stay part of Pakistan or not. So that's, again, by the way, people say, well, you must love the Balochi people, or you must love these people. No. I love freedom, I love democracy, I love the fact that ordinary people can live decent lives, and I love those principles. And to the degree that the Baloch have that as their aspirations, I'm going to be on their side. I will not be on the side of someone because of their ethnicity or anything like that. And I think it behooves all of us to recognize these fundamental principles. And it's basically, the good guys on this planet need to stick together. And when the bad guys are brutalizing some people who want nothing more than to control their own lives and set their own destinies through the ballot box, let us good guys side with those who are being oppressed. We should always, as a matter of principle, support those who are oppressed or are struggling for freedom and oppose their oppressor, rather than trying to make short-term profit deals, as some people in our country like to do. Go up and make short-term profit with these gangsters who are murdering other human beings. And that's not the American way, and I can assure you the American people, many of us still have that spark, that love of freedom that is supposed to be the essence of our country. So, but the other essence of our country, by the way, is that we come from every ethnic background. There's every race and every religion in our country. What unites us, hopefully, the only thing that can unite us is if we stay true to those principles. So thank you all very much, and we are with you.